Digital Influx are a London-based edtech company. We're offering a 12-part course for 8 to 11-year-olds to learn the basics of user experience principles and design thinking. Programs relating to STEM are important, as children should be taught how to think, not what to think. The course aims to develop their problem-solving, teamwork, and critical thinking skills, among many more. Each lesson will have short videos and games to make sure your experience is fun and memorable and fits with your own learning style. And it improves soft skills by using real-life practical examples to improve empathy. To learn more, please visit digitalinflux.com.
Yes, of course. I feel similarly to the way I feel about kind of coding being taught in schools, which is obviously becoming much more apparent. And I think also for children who are growing up in a kind of new digital era, like I think all of us grew up without a kind of fully digital childhood. And I think growing up now is incredibly different to how we grew up. And so there is going to be a lot more awareness of digital experiences, and children will have a lot more interest in that. So I think like sort of teaching UX in schools is absolutely vital. And I think also like schools obviously do a fantastic job, but could do perhaps a better job of going into more detail around like specific kind of like careers potentially. So that can definitely help as well. And just looking at what my notes are. Yeah, I think kind of more awareness around kind of these, experiences. I'm more interested in improving that. So I think it would be really great, particularly in the education space, which can have some, really need some improvements. I think it would be really valuable in that space. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, again. And kind of all of the technical skills that Becky has just talked about is obviously incredibly important. But I think, for me, it comes from a kind of a slightly different level, which is user experience. Obviously, in UX requires lots of different skills, technical, but also you need to be empathetic. You need to have a good level of understanding of someone's psychology. You need to have a good ability to listen and actually hear what's being said. You need to have an understanding of your biases, of biases that live within the world and stereotypes. So there's an awful lot of skills that come around, and they're classed as soft skills, but they're incredibly important. And I think, whether or not in the long run we go, create a whole array of UXers that go on to do UX, or they go on to do something else, they have learned some really core fundamental skills about inclusivity and diversity and creating spaces that need to account for everybody. Those, when we laugh about them, those edge cases that, that one person that can't do that, why are we thinking about them? Well, they'll understand and they'll know why that's so important. And in the long run, hopefully not offending anyone, but we'll start to see diversity from the top down. At the moment, we've got a lot of white men in kind of the exec seats, and hopefully we'll start to see a whole array of people sitting at the top and educating. And it's not going to be a thing of you've ticked the diversity box. It's just going to be normal because we've taught it from schools. And so I think there's a lot of benefits to teaching UX from, the ground up.
I agree with Ron that empathy is big. Hey? So the question is whether we should be teaching UX in schools or not, and I think we shouldn't. And the reason for that is because UX is very narrow in nature. I think that we should rather be teaching people how to think, like young kids how to think. We should be telling them how to prototype and telling them that failing is okay, that they need to build their resilience to errors. And we should be telling them how to be active parts in what will become a new generation of resilient societies that will need to exist in order to be facing these kind of issues. The problem that I see with society today is that society itself expects perfection from people, or closer to perfection. They are terrified of being vulnerable. They are terrified of failure, and that is not the environment where you can grow innovation, because failure itself is the foundation of learning. So if you think about it, there's no designer that you can remember today that got where he is or where she is by copying Twitter sign-up flow or copying Amazon checkout flow, right? So that doesn't exist, because great designers today are failing. Great designers are measuring, thinking, trying to get things right. They are working at the frontier where if they don't get it right, nobody else will. And in order to get it right, they need to try and try and try again. So there's like a huge gap between what they do and where they want to be. But I guess among all of those features, the one that is key is they are actively trying to seek themselves wrong. They are not trying to prove themselves right. They are trying to prove themselves wrong, because the minute that they prove themselves wrong is when they actually can learn from what they're doing. So I would rather teach this mindset to kids. I would teach them empathy, because empathy, as Bronwen was saying, is a key to delivering value. So teach empathy to kids. Teach them how to craft with intention to solve somebody else's problem. Because kids need to understand today that in order to live a meaningful and purposeful life, they don't need likes on Instagram. They actually need to create value for other people. But we don't have that a lot. That doesn't happen a lot. So we need to teach our kids how to create value on the emotional landscape, environmental value, economic and financial value, cultural and social value. And this will only happen when they understand what is important to other people. So empathy is sort of the delivery channel by which design thinking realizes its value. And that's why when you have design organizations that are design driven, they typically outperform their counterparts. So I would focus on teaching empathy among everything else, because when we are old, we want our kids to be designing intentional synergies with software, intentional synergies with services, and intentional synergies with products, so we can focus on what matters. And an example of this is, how can we fix the education system itself so that it stops chopping off our kids' creativity and our kids' problem-solving skills that they come up with from when they are really young. So I think, like, overall, I think that UX is a little bit a narrow term. I think that we should be telling them or teaching them how to problem solve and how to design think.
I do feel that, yes, should be taught in school, specifically the mindset behind. I think Edgar had a really good point, which is like, it's not necessarily, when I think about UX in school, I'm not talking, in my mind, I'm not thinking about like, I don't know, UX methodologies and tools and things like that, but more the mentality of like the way that we have been developing as UX designers, of questioning what is wrong, like with the product, that what is not working, what is working, why is not working, and things like that. I think that is the part of UX that I see that, like, yeah, teach the kids that, and the kids will go crazy. It will be great to see. Like I just imagine like throwing a problem into a kid. You can already see that like a kid has very little limitations on what's possible, what's impossible, because the amount of references that they have. So teaching them that they should continue having that kind of free mind when thinking about a problem or how to solve a problem, it like in a long run, it could be mind blowing watching those kids. I think like it reminds me a little bit of like that book from Yuval, like the guy who wrote Homo Sapiens, and like one of the things that I think Edgar was mentioning, like, oh, teach the kids to have empathy. I think like it connects a lot of what he said about that. He said like the best advice that he can give to a 15-year-old today is like, don't rely on the adults, because most of the time they don't know much, and that's to do with like our emotional intelligence. That as adults, like how many times we with like just looking at this group now and the age that we have, when we think about like, I thought that by this age I would know what to do with this situation. I thought that I would understand more things and I would know what to do. So yeah, teaching kids like to prepare them to these moments, I think would be interesting. And then finally, I think is to do as well with this whole idea of like, should we teach or not teach? I think like 50 years ago, probably like when it comes to the whole workforce and jobs and careers and things like that, 50 years ago, you would go into a job interview and people would ask, they wouldn't ask directly, but they would ask you like, can you come in here, do your job, conform to what we propose to you and do it? And the people that would succeed would be the ones that would say like, yeah, I can do it and I will do it really well. Like, and then I think, I don't know, like a couple of years ago or even now, we are still asking people in interviews like, well, what did you create? Like, what is the thing that you create recently? And what do you like creating? And give me examples of things that you create. And I think like if we follow that trend, like in 50 years time, and that's again a reference to Yuval, because I think that's where I got that inspiration or that thought. 50 years time, we will be in a position where probably in an interview situation, we might ask like, okay, what did you invent and what did you reinvent and what did you do on top of that invention that you do? And so there is a lot that I think will be expected from humans with the years that come ahead of us. And I have, in my mind, I have no doubt that UX skills, considering more on this philosophical side of UX, like all the mindsets and ways of thinking, if that is taught in school, there is definitely potential to just improve life. That's the way that I see it.
First of all, I'm sorry for the other order. I think you're having a sample of what it's like to work with a kid at home. So about the question, I'm sorry, I couldn't agree more with what you guys said. I completely agree about the empathy side of UX. I think we talk so much about empathy in our everyday work as designers, but in our culture, we are used to disrespecting children, and we demand that they respect us in return. So we forgot how it feels to be a child, and we never tried to make an effort to empathize with them. And I've been thinking a lot about this right now because I just have a baby now, and all of these thoughts about how we treat children in our society are popping in my head. And I can't help but think that when this child grows, and go trying to find a job, we as society demand audacity, demand an innovative mind, demand someone persistent, someone with bold ideas, and this is not what they are taught at school. So when you are a child, if you are persistent, people will call you stubborn. So, and we human beings are born with empathy. Just a fun fact, at 18 months, I just noted here, at 18 months, a baby starts to offer comfort. So they are so little. They not only notice when people are in distress, they try to help actually, like actively. So in short, I think, yes, we as society would certainly be benefited from teaching UX methods at schools. And in fact, my younger sister, she had one project in high school in a Spanish class where her teacher decided to apply the double diamond framework. And she didn't know at the time. She only discovered that it was a design tool when she went to study design in the university. And I asked her how it was for her, and she said that, and for her friends, of course, because they went to all different kinds of functions. They didn't turn out everyone designers. So there are people who went to be international relations and gastronomy and etc. So I asked her how it was for her and for her friends. And they said that they feel that the tools helped them organize their ideas, made everyone in the group feel more involved with the project, and also helped them to better communicate what they were thinking. So yeah, I think teaching these UX methods would certainly benefit society and benefit them. And if it doesn't benefit society, at least in a personal level, we'll teach these kids tools for them to help communicate better with each other and try to understand each other.
Well, I pretty much agree with what everyone has been saying here, especially about the empathy part, which is also what I wanted to talk about. I don't know if UX should be taught in general schooling, but I do think teaching empathy, which is something closely related to UX, would be really beneficial, not just in design, but general society. I don't think there's any negativity that will come out of teaching little people the ability to understand one another and share the feelings of one another. And I think to be thoughtful and caring is a really great attribute to have, just as a human, and maybe a skill that is probably useful in other fields such as UX or hospitality or in service. And just being able to be empathetic would generally make the world a kinder and more understanding place.